Yo, what is poppin' with 420 Army? It's finally here. But Ice Age Continental Drift review. I know, I was really thinking on if I wanted to rewatch the movie before I actually recorded this video, but I did, and it's just as much as, it's literally just a big snooze fest like I thought it was. Yeah, I was about to go purely off memory, but there were a few scenes I wanted to double check before recording this, so yep, we're gonna go through this film and explain how it really started milking the franchise. Like, this is where they started milking the franchise, and why there's, like, all this stuff in this film that's just literally boring for no reason. Literally, but yes, as you can tell from the title, it's like Pirates of the Caribbean 2012 and Finding Nemo combined with Ice Age characters. So either way, we'll just jump into this film. So basically, it starts with Scrat, like all the Ice Age films do. It starts with Scrat on like a mountain trying to bury his acorn, but then he ends up, it literally, like, it splits open and he falls to the Earth's core and he ends up seeing Buck along the way, which, yes, this is the only time we ever see Buck in this film. He does not appear in any other subsequent scenes, but there's one good thing the fifth film had, is that we got to see Buck again in that. So then Scrat falls to the Earth's core and he's like chasing his acorn while also causing all of the land to crack because the inner core is spinning. And it's like, are you implying that that Scrat trying to bury his nut is the reason why the Earth looks the way it does today, with like all the continents spread apart from each other? Because we know that Earth was one big continent before it all moved. It's like, what? And it just they just shoehorned in a whole bunch of stupid jokes, like Australia, Italy kicking a rock away, and then Scrat even forming like pyramids and like faces on rocks before he finally grabs his acorn and he gets flung into space briefly before he tries to jump back into the water, and he ends up being separated from his acorn. It's like, really, when it first cracks, you couldn't have just swam over to the piece of ice that your acorn was on. Yeah. But anyways, after the title card, we see like land cracking, and it like zooms into Manny when he hears like so he's checking to make sure Ellie's okay, which she is, and that the cracking must be miles away. And he sees that his daughter Peaches is gone, which, yes, if you watched my review of 3 last month, Manny and Ellie had a baby in the 3rd film. So and he's like, no teenagers ever up early. Somehow they decided they would make Peaches a teenager, which you would think there would be a film in between this Dawn of the Dinosaurs and this one, but no, we just had to jump right to the teenage years. Like, what? And then after he wakes up crashing Eddie, they tell him, oh, Peaches probably went with Lewis to the falls. And Manny is once again being an asshole. It's like, no, I don't want her going to the falls. He's gonna get addicted to berries and pierce her trunk. And I actually agree with Ellie here. It's just where the kids hang out, and Manny is overreacting because he knows that Peaches won't be his little girl forever. But then we see Peaches kind of swinging on some trees. And also, by the way, Peaches is voiced by Keke Palmer. This is her first film where she actually has dialogue. So, and then her friend Lewis, a mole hog, he's voiced by Josh Gad, which this came out a year before the original Frozen. So we basically got Olaf in this movie before he was ever made. Oh my god. And then, either way, they're just kind of walking through the woods and talking about guys before Minnie confronts them, and he's like, you know how I feel about you going to the falls, especially alone, and you don't count, Wiener. Yeah, for some reason he calls Lewis Wiener, and for some reason he still considers Peaches as being alone. It's like, you are such an asshole. Not letting Peaches make any friends. And then that's when the cracking, like, that Scrat cause reaches on and Lewis heads in the ground. Before we cut to Diego, he's like roaring at some trees. And then he ends up getting hit by a sled, which is being driven by a bunch of sloths, and they just so happen to be Sid's family. So then Eddie Soletto is Uncle Funkus, Sid's uncle, Joy Behar, or Behar is Eunice, Sid's mother, and then who voices Sid's dad? I'm trying to go to Wikipedia of this movie, but they're kind of going down the hill. Oh, Alan Tudyk was Sid's father. So then they're kind of going down the hill, and then Sid's little brother Marshall is also their Ben Glib. Yeah, so Anyways, after like going down some hills, and also Sid's granny is voiced by Wanda Sykes. She's there too, wondering where her pet whale Precious is. Oops, I just spoiled it, but yeah, she has a pet that she's looking for. And then Diego climbs up, and then he goes right into Granny after Sid's mom throws him back, and they're just kind of sliding down the hill before we see Manny and Peaches talking when Peaches is asking, when will I be allowed to hang out with boys? And Manny tells her, when I'm dead, plus 3 days, just to make sure I'm dead. What the actual fuck is wrong with you, Manny? You're not letting your daughter meet anyone. But then the sled almost hits Peaches, but luckily Diego is able to stop it before it can. And then, also, Sid hears Uncle Fungus scream when Diego's about to eat him, but luckily then he hugs his family, and he's reunited with them, and then he even sees Granny, and Peaches slinks off after Manny tells her, see, he still hugs his parents. It's like, you guys are mammoths? How are you mammoths supposed to hug each other? They can't walk on 2 legs like sloths can. So then, also, by the way, they realize that Sid wanted to see his Granny before she passes away, and then Granny also says, I'll bury you all and dance on your grave. See, that's actually one of the few lines in this film that did make me laugh, so that's why this film isn't, like, completely awful, but still dull, because there were some jokes in this film that I did find funny, so yeah, anyway, after Sid's parents, like, make Sid and Granny go for like a nice walk, they take this as an opportunity to leave, and Minnie's like, Sid will be crushed. And then once they're gone, Sid briefly comes back to find Granny's teeth, but then Annie and Diego tell Sid that his family left and they only wanted to find him so he could take care of Granny. And for some reason Granny completely just wanders off. So then they're looking for her, and Sid even has like some prunes in his mouth. It's like, is that normal for sloths? And Manny and Diego are, like, grossed out, but then Manny catches Peaches walking with Lewis, and he's like, oh, no. It's like, God damn it, Manny, don't you do what I think you're gonna do. He does it, by the way, but we'll get to that soon. So anyways, Peaches and Lewis are at the falls, and they're spying on, like, some of the kids hanging out, which there's one mammoth, Ethan, voiced by Drake. Yes, the Drake, the rapper, as in the rapper Drake, and fun fact, Ethan is actually my legal middle name, so yeah, that's another piece of 420 lore for you. So anyways, they're kind of watching until like a deer goes over some geysers where he gets blasted and his antlers break. And also, Crash and Eddie show up. It's like, oh yeah, Minnie sent us to spy on you, but not let you see us under any circumstances. Stupid! 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 Yep, luckily Crash and Eddie still managed to be funny in this film, so then Peaches tries to go in, but then she actually slips on some ice and goes down a whole bunch of slides before she crashes right into Ethan. She's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to crash into you. And somehow May managed to get him to find his way down there. And he tells Ethan, you keep the fuck away from my daughter, and you, Missy, are grounded. Yeah, he grounded his daughter, which upsets Peaches, and she wanders off. And then, of course, they're just like, Peaches is upset that Minnie supposedly embarrassed her in front of her friends. It's like, were they really your friends to begin with? You never really mentioned that. But, oh my god, then they're just in like a heated argument, which is like from Finding Nemo, and then it gets to the point where Peaches literally says word for word, I wish you weren't my father.
Wow.
Holy fuck! Man, he just made his own daughter hate him. Don't say you didn't deserve that, because I'm pretty sure we would have seen that coming from a mile away, with you not letting her meet friends. It's like, how the fuck is she supposed to have friends when you're constantly keeping her home all the time? Like, it's like, jeez, it's like, I mean, obviously, I know you're worried that you're gonna lose her the same way you lost your first wife before you met Ellie and before you had Peaches, but still, the humans are just completely erased from, like, the timeline after the first movie, so that's not gonna happen again, but even though something could still possibly happen that he'd still lose Peaches and Ellie, so, but either way, he could have just told her, like, hey, just keep yourself safe with a weapon or something, and if you sense any danger, just defend yourself off. Like, that's all it is, so that way she's still making friends. It's like, don't just be a complete dickhead and keep her home and not let her meet people. Like, no, that's why if I ever have kids, I'm gonna completely spoil them, so I'm guaranteed, so that they're not guaranteed to hate me, and just, although, if I ever have multiple kids, that's where it's going to be tough. Yeah. Okay, yeah, rant's over. Anyways, Ellie kind of comes in and starts to tell Peaches that's not the end of the world, but that starts a whole earthquake. Yeah, maybe she just said that when there's a goddamn earthquake, and then, like, the ground cracks between Manny and Ellie, and then he says, stay there, I'll come to you. But unfortunately, right as he approaches Ellie, the ground cracks, and then they try, like, locking trunks with each other like they did in the second film when they were on the cliff, but unfortunately this does not work, and even Peaches is horrified, because obviously it was just in the heat of the moment that caused her to hate her father, and she obviously loves him deep down, which we see that after, like, once it's completely broken apart. But anyway, Manny tries to jump back, but Diego stops him, saying he never would have made it. It's like, would Manny have made that jump if Diego hadn't stopped him, or would he have just fallen to his death? That's actually one thing I'm kind of curious about. But then, all of a sudden, a giant wall appears from behind, and yep, this is pretty much where we're starting to get into where this this is a set piece that this movie ripped off from 2012 with the separation scene, but it's in the open instead of in a store. So then Manny tells Peaches and Ellie to get to a land bridge and they'll be safe, and then once, like, they're completely separated, and then Manny even yells at them to stay alive and that he will find them no matter how long it takes, and obviously Peaches is sad she's like, no, why did I have to ignore him? Because what if I never see him again and the last thing we ever did was fight? And Ellie's, like, comforting her, saying, don't worry, your father is the most stubborn mammoth I have ever met, and he will come back for us. That's a promise. So, and we cut back to Manny, Sid, and Diego on their iceberg, and Manny's, like, trying to turn it around with a log that just appeared out of thin air, and he's trying to, like, use that, and then Diego joins in with his leg, while Sid is using, like, a twig he supposedly grabbed off of a tree, and then we see Peaches and Ellie kind of get everyone to calm down to avoid before they all get crushed to death by the oncoming wall, and then Peaches is like, oh shit, we gotta find Lewis. So then they do that before we see Mace and Diego still paddling. It's like, and Diego's like, yeah, this thing is not gonna turn, the current's pulling us out. And then, like, Sid tells him, like, how his mother told him about bad news is good news in disguise before she abandoned him, and that there's supposed to be a rainbow around every corner, but it turns out they're getting blown into a goddamn hurricane. It's like, yeah, this... You know what? So once they get blown in the hurricane, we cut to Peaches and Ellie looking for Lewis, and then we see Crash and Eddie are just yelling, Wiener, calling him Wiener. It's like, you know, one of them actually said Lewis's real name earlier when Manny first woke them up. Why are they calling him Wiener here? So then Peaches heads back to the falls and sees Lewis is, like, cornered by the wall, and she's telling him, dude, you gotta jump if you want to make it, if you want to live, and I'm not gonna leave without you. So then Lewis eventually jumps after Peaches encourages him to, and he's like, this is why I travel underground. So then after Peaches catches Lewis, they go running, and then Ellie tells everyone about, like, how the wall, once they're get back to Ellie, she says the wall's going to keep moving and crush them, and they have to get to that land bridge. And for any questions, and some little chicken asks them, when you drink water through your trunk, does it taste like boogers? What the fuck? Yeah, this is just another joke that falls flat. That sometimes does, and then they gotta move. Before we cut back to Mace and Diego in the goddamn thunderstorm, they're trying to keep their eye on the horizon before their iceberg flips over. And holy crab! They have freaking Tamatoa on, like, literally, there's a literal crab on their iceberg, and yet they're trying to fix the fact that this is another set piece that this movie ripped off from 2012 with the cruise ship, but no. The crab, and changing it to a iceberg and shoehorning in a crab does not fix this. And then, for some reason, after they go blasting through a wave, which the crab tried to attack Sid, and then the crab just completely disappears and he's never seen again. It's like, what happened to the crab? His leg was ripped off, but then they get sucked up through a tornado before there's a little rainbow, and Sid's like, oh wow, there is a rainbow around every corner. And then the hurricane is over, they fall back. It's like, yep, we got some Finding Nemo in 2012. And, oh, the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff is coming up. soon, but anyways, we cut back to Peaches kind of just walking, and she still feels bad for the way she acted during the fight with her father before she's startled by like a landslide, and then she kind of tells Lewis how worried she is about her father, and Lewis is comforting her, saying, "Don't worry, we're all gonna survive this." Okay, maybe Crash and Eddie won't, but everyone else totally fine, because Crash and Eddie were just walking past them and they fell down where the landslide was, and they're like stuck on a tree before we cut back to Mace and Diego recovering from the storm. And they realize they're still heading away from home, but then Sid is trying to tells them to be grateful that they're still alive and that they still have each other. And Diego even agrees before he gets whacked with the cane, because Granny is hiding in one of the trees. It's like, what? Was Granny in the tree that whole time, even during like the separation? Like, what? Again, I do not get the joke. So then Manny pulls Granny out of the tree, and they're surprised that she slept through that storm, and then she walks off the iceberg into the ocean to have like a supposed bath, and she even says, "This is my first bath in decades." It's like, considering that you just killed a shark and a bunch of fish? And then Sid's like, okay, somebody do something. And then Manny just becomes, he's still an asshole here by grabbing Sid, throwing him into the water after Granny, but then Sid grabs Granny, puts her back on the iceberg, and she's upset. It's like, I can't take a bath in peace, and like, how long do we have to deal with her? But then the camera moves out to reveal Scrat just kind of slowly paddling on like a piece of ice before he sees like a small island with a palm tree, and he immediately swims over to that, which I remember before when the fourth film was about to be released, I went to see some films back in 2012, and that they actually had like this Scrat's Continental crack-up short that played before a couple films. I forget which ones exactly, but then when Scrat is on that island, he finds a skeleton, and then he dunks his face in water, see like a half acorn at the bottom, which then he grabs a boulder that just magically appears out of nowhere. He dunks down into the water, and then he gets like all fucked up from like his ears, his nose, and then once he pulls the acorn out, he realizes it's a map leading to like Scrat Atlantis, so then he decides to follow it. But unfortunately, like a harpoon comes like shooting out of nowhere, and it like pulls him onto like a floating iceberg. Before we cut back to Mason Diego still stuck on their iceberg, and Sid is like drinking from the water. Well, he literally drinks out of the water. He's like, that's a little salty. Like, what? He tried drinking salt water again. I mean, and of course, Granny's still looking for her pet, Precious, and she even asks Diego. It's like, in case you're talking deceased or imaginary pet, then no, I have not. And then they see Minnie sees a bird in the sky, thinking that when there's birds, there's land. But this is Silas, who is voiced by Alan Shabat. He's part of Captain Gut's crew. Gut voiced by Peter Dinklage. Which, yep, here we are, the Pirates of the Caribbean plotline. Silas flies back to the ship, tells Gut, who's basically discount Davy Jones, about the crew, and then Gut's like, in my ocean, what a terrible turn of events, which I love. And then that's when their ship comes into view, and then they think, ooh, this must be a party cruise, and there's probably animals on board, before like these skulls come, and then they realize, nope, this is a ship filled with pirates. So then, and Gut's crew is like ridiculously small. We have an elephant seal named Flynn, voiced by Nick Frost, a kangaroo named Raz, voiced by Rebel Wilson, a mute boar named Dobson. Dobson's name is never mentioned in the film, and so is Silas. Neither is Silas's, and weren't even in the Ice Age Arctic Games video game. I had them for the Nintendo 3DS when I was little, so man, I love that game, but I don't know why Silas and Dobson were not in it. So then we have this rabbit named Squint, voiced by I'm trying to find it. Sorry. as is, I'm sorry, Squint, he's a rabbit, and then also there's like this badger named Gupta, who's voiced by Kunal Nair, but this is basically Gupta right here on the cover. That's Gut, and that's Squint right there. And also, what's so funny, Kunal Nair, who voices Gupta, he's actually the guy who voices Raj on the Big Bang Theory, and that's Flynn right there. So, yeah, it's like, wow, Rajesh Kutherpally is a pirate now. So yeah, and by the way, Goop doesn't have very many lines in this film, but every time he spoke, it's like, yeah, that sounds like Raj. So, like, alternate universe where Raj became a pirate instead of working at Caltech. And then, sure, could you get Sheldon, Leonard, and Howard to come be pirates with you? And then also, there's Shira, voiced by Jennifer Lopez, who's the first mate. So then, Gut is, like, talking to them, and they think he's, and then he's like, look, we're just trying to get back to the continent. And we get another funny line when Gut says, the continent? That pile of rubble? Another joke in this, another line in this film that I actually did kind of laugh at. And then he's like, my family's there. And then Gut tries to tell him, yeah, well, I hope you say goodbye to your family because there's no way back to the continent from here. You're forced to stay here. Until Flint says, yes, there is. You can head back to switch back home and catch a current back from there. And of course, Davy Jones is not happy with that, and he tries to convince him that there is no home and the ship belongs to him, which kind of leads to like a little skirmish where they're subdued, and then unfortunately they even start shooting cannonballs at them, and then Diego's like trying to cut them free before Jones sends Shira to stop Diego, which, by the way, when Diego gets, like, to the last vine, Shira cuts him off. It's like, oh, you almost made it. And Diego says he doesn't fight girls. It's like, motherfucker, it's like, you just tickle that bitch and then cut the line. It's like, do you not know how easy it is to subdue a girl? It's like, yes, between my two girlfriends, the one that between three girlfriends, like, one who's, like, fat as fuck, one that I thought was her, but before she was, like, turned to be an anaconda in disguise, and one that I unfortunately was trying to get over with, but I couldn't connect with because she lacked in combat. I was able to overpower the last two, so you can easily overpower her. And then Flynn, who's like fucking Chris Walker from Outlast, does a belly flop on top of Sid, because apparently we can't have a big fucking guy ripping off people's heads in a kid's movie, so yes. And by the way, I'm probably throwing up like fan designs of like pirates I made for this video, so if there's like that, I'll probably just I'll probably throw like an Outlast Trials on. But anyway, Manny is knocked out by a cannonball, which, how did he survive that? Because I'm pretty sure if you took like a cannonball blast to the fucking head, that would likely kill you. So, yeah, anyways, after they wake up on the ship, Manny sees he's like tied up with Diego slightly above them. And also, this is the only time in the franchise a villain ever interacted with Scrat, so basically, they're just kind of, like, eating all the food, and then Gut tries to, like, welcome him. He's like, let me exchange the hand of friendship. And he's like, that's your foot. But, of course, Davy Jones then is like, I bet you're feeling lost, scared, and confused. Allow me to explain. Help me out, boys. And then we get a freaking musical number. It's like, really? You had to give your Davy Jones ripoff a song, which, don't get me wrong, the song isn't really that bad, but it's like, did they really have to use it? Because obviously Davy Jones's beard isn't alive in this version. It's just like, it's not like actual like moving tentacles. So then after the song is over, Manny's like, yeah, I wouldn't name myself after that. And Gut even tells me that he's a funny guy. It's like, he is not a funny guy. Clearly, obviously you didn't see that he made his own goddamn daughter hate him. And then he's like, that's not how I got my name. These claws got me my name. And he even demonstrates on Sid on how he gets his name, and of course Sid's like super ticklish and he's like laughing, and then of course Sid is retarded and doesn't get it. It's like, yeah, maybe you didn't have another stupid character here. So it's like, sure, hire some stupid people in your crew. And then also Minnie is like, he says he wants to join the crew, but he wants to get back to his family, and then Gut tells him that family is going to be the death of you. It's like, yeah, you know, the reason why this is basically Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest is because Gut is basically Davy Jones, and Manny is essentially Will Turner. So, except I don't know who Sid, Diego, and Granny would be, because obviously in Pirates of the Caribbean 2, Will was on the Dutchman by himself, and he didn't bring anybody with him. So then they get the plank ready to walk Granny and Sid along, and because apparently 5 lashes is too gruesome for a kid's film, so they just stuck with walking the plank instead. But then when Sid and Granny are on the plank, Diego just has Manny get him to, like, a vine so that way he can cut it, and then like a skirmish breaks out on the ship with Manny and Gut dueling each other. It's like, sure, Davy Jones and Will Turner fights, and it's like, and of course they have to shoehorn in the "I'm not fat" joke from the first 3 films, which luckily this is the last time to date that they ever used this joke. It didn't come back in the 5th movie or Buck Wild, so that's one good thing. So anyways, after Will Turner knocks over the mast, Granny ends up falling into Sid, and like the whole Flying Dutchman breaks apart, and then all the pirates fall into the water, and Davy Jones has said that his bounty is gone. It's like, no, my bounty, and of course he's angry, so then Manny, Sid, Diego, and Granny are like part of the ship that's like survived before Gut is trying to get all of his crew members, and then of course they had to shoehorn in some joke that falls flat with Flynn. He's like, oh no, we sank our battleship, we're gonna drown. And then Gut even is like, you're a sea creature, you idiot. Yeah, this joke just falls flat because it's a goddamn seal. And also, by the way, in case you were wondering, Davy Jones and his crew, they cannot teleport or breathe underwater in this version, so they have their own little ice boat. And yeah, at least you don't have the Will Smith fish from Shark Tale and the freaking Jar Jar Binks elephant from Inside Out that was part of Dolphin. Yes, I'm going to expose Inside Out in this video again, like I did in my Brave review. Like, well, Brave review, it was how that movie fell victim to the curse of the Rod Torque Red Line death sequence, and this video is them creating a stupid person character that did not work. So then they're just kind of swimming away. It's like, oh god, can you imagine having Jar Jar Binks, Oscar from Shark Tale, and Bing Bong on your raft at the same time? It's like, yeah, those 3 stupid person characters were just flat out. Like, Jar Jar Binks is like, oh, Misa, go this way. Misa, and then Oscar's like, ooh, just blowing all their booties, like, 5,000 to get here. And then you have the freaking Jar Jar Binks, Bing Bong is like, ooh, shortcut here, D-A-N-G-E-R, shortcut. It's like, Davy Jones is like, I have to put up with the 3 cunts, the 3 retards. It's like, well, on this journey, it's like, oh my god. And the freaking dead body, which, yes, I have 2 designs with the Paul brothers. And of course, Shira. He left Shira behind. It's like, really, he didn't even bother to look for her, so then, of course, she doesn't want to go with Sid, Manny, Diego, and Granny, but they rescue her anyway, and she thinks it's sort of a bad joke, and then Manny still kind of misses Ellie's looking out, and then we kind of cut back to them back at the continent, walking towards the land bridge until like that night when they decide to rest, and then we see a scene of Peaches hanging upside down in a tree. She's like, I miss you, Dad. I really wish you were here right now so I could tell you how sorry I was. And then that's when Ethan shows up, and then Peaches falls out of the tree, and she's like, oh no, I don't sleep like that. It just kind of helps me think. And then they're just kind of casually talking, which Ellie sees. It's like, and then we kind of throw in some more random plot point, a stupid plot point, and then Ethan actually invites Peaches to walk with him the following morning, and she's like, oh, sure, I suppose I could do that. And Ethan even tells her, well, you almost fired me this morning, so I don't think anything could go wrong. And by the way, if you do want to walk with me, it'll be under one condition. You'll have to lose the mole hog. And Peaches actually says, oh yeah, no problem, I'll totally ditch the mole hog. You idiots! Why would you actually listen to that? You should have said, no, I'm bringing my best friend along. God, and then that's when she starts to realize that Ethan's the wrong guy for her. This video might actually be as long as the movie itself. The movie is 88 minutes long, because I'm just like throwing in all sorts of like fan designs and that I made for this video to help keep the video as funny as possible. So I apologize that this video is a little bit on the longer side, but I'm trying to keep it as funny as possible despite how much of a snooze fest this film was. So when Ellie walks over, they can have a brief little talk before Ellie hangs herself on the tree and asks Peaches if she wants to come up, and she says, no, I think I'll sleep down here tonight. before saying goodnight, and then she says, "Good night to Manny," or like, she says, "Good night, Dad, wherever you are." And then that's when we kind of cut to, like, the Manny, Sid, Diego, Granny, and Shira on, like, their ice block, which somehow got smaller. Like, how did it just shrink all of a sudden? It's like, it's not like it's melting or something, and Granny's trying to chew, like, a shell, and she asks Sid to do it, but then Sid opens the shell, and of course they had to shoe her in a gag with Granny beating up Scrat with her cane before Scrat falls in the water, and the shell closes on Sid's fingers, which he breaks the shell, and it gets even smaller. It's like, why are we trying to make Sid stupid? And then Diego and Shira are arguing until they find an island, and then they start swimming towards it before Sid eats some berries, which he thinks are bees. It's like, you didn't eat any of the food on Davy Jones's ship before you destroyed it, or even some of, like, pears that were on, like, your ice rack when you were first separated. So Minnie's like, okay, we gotta build a raft so we can get home. And then they had to toss in a goddamn chase sequence with Diego chasing after Shira, which just drags on for so long until, you know what, I'm just gonna skip all this. Let's just get to where Diego pins Shira, and then he realizes, holy shit, we're actually at Switchback Cove, which is the way home. And guess what? Surprise, motherfucker, Davy Jones is here too. And he kidnapped these little creatures called Hyraxes and trying to force them to, like, maintain order on his ship. It's like, yeah, Switchback Cove is basically the Isla Cruces sequence of this film, so yeah. So then Manny, Sid, and Diego realize they found their way home, and Sid's like, too bad we don't have a ship, though. Before Manny tells him, actually, yes, we do have a ship. It's right there. We're going to steal it from the pirates. And then Shira even thinks the plane is stupid, and then they hear the Hyraxes. Yes, they have these little creatures called Hyraxes that are on this island. It's like, wow, Isla Cruces actually has some inhabitants on it in this version, so yep, which Davy Jones is kind of held captive, and some who escaped are trying to help the heroes, saying, okay, now I'll help you, we're not going to hurt you. So then it kind of drags on with me saying, okay, how would you help us fight the pirates? And the Hyraxes aren't getting it until Sid gives it a try, and they actually manage to listen to Sid, because he's like making a whole bunch of random sounds, and then they make their deal, and then that night Diego tries to offer Shira some water, but she doesn't want it, but then she eventually takes it, and they're just kind of casually talking, and then Sid even gives Diego a necklace before leaving, but then Shira and Diego are still talking. Shira thinks that Gut has her back since she's her first mate. It's like, yeah, no, David Jones doesn't care about you. I don't think he cares about any of his crew members, both in this version and in Pirates of the Caribbean Deathmatch Chest, which, yeah. So anyway, Shira thinks that they won't be able to beat Gut, and that Manny has no idea what's going up with, and then Diego tells, yeah, well, neither does Gut. Before we kind of cut to, we see a brief snippet of Manny talking to Hyraxes through their plan until the following, and then it cuts to the following morning where they actually decide to go through with their plan. It's like, alright, Diego, you go free the rest of the Hyraxes, and as for you, Sid and Granny, you know you unwind the vines and don't let go until we're all on board. And Granny even is like, that's gonna be easy since we don't have to guard Shira anymore. Oh shit, we gotta move ASAP because she escaped. And then they see Shira running towards Gut's ship, and then he's like ordering his crew to set sail. So then, and there's no dead bodies. So anyways, no, the dead body will come in later. But then Shira gets back to the ship, and Gut's kind of happy to see her until she reveals that Manny washed ashore with her, and then Gut's like, what? That bastard is here on the island? Did you sink your fangs into him, or did he beg for his life? And then she mentions Diego taking her down, and Gut's like, you are a failure. I need warriors, and all I have are these goddamn kitty cats and bunny rabbits. And they just have to toss in Flint saying, oh, and a seal and a kangaroo, which, okay. I'm sorry. Again, I don't know Nick Frost very well, so I'm pretty sure someone who does know Nick Frost very well is going to have to let me know in the comments if he normally does this in his other films. But then Gut orders Shira to take Diego down or die trying before he makes Squint his new first mate, and Squint's happy with that because apparently he had a rivalry with Shira even when he was first recruited, but then Shira tries to warn Gut about Minnie coming to ship before being interrupted by the Hyraxes blowing a horn, and they're like dressed up in these like kind of like warrior outfits, and the pirates laugh at first until they see like a sculpture of Manny behind them, and then Gut orders the pirates to grab their weapons, and they go charging towards the ship. Yeah, because you have a ridiculously small crew, and apparently Davy Jones can walk on land whenever he wants in this version, they just completely leave their new ship abandoned, which gives Manny instead the perfect opportunity to unwind the vines while Diego frees the rest of the Hyraxes. So they're kind of unwinding the vines. They do this, the first two vines, and then it's like, unwind the vines. Don't let... No, God fucking damn it. We had to toss in Sid eating a lotus berry and getting paralyzed, even with Diego warning him that it was going to do so, but Sid has to ignore Diego and eat the berry anyway, and he's paralyzed. And this isn't as pointless as the body swap scene in Shrek the Third, but it's not far behind it either. So then, eventually, the Hyraxes lure Davy Jones's crew towards Manny, and then after they pick up the Hyraxes, Squint charges in. It's like, oop, we finally gonna see a dead body. Put it on camera. Yes, I even made a fan slide that has the Paul brothers and a whole bunch of other YouTubers like EDP 445, Popular MMOs, and Venturian Tale, because Popular MMOs and Venturian were actually YouTubers I liked back in the day before I started doing YouTube myself. So then they realized that it was just a sculpture and that they were fooled, so then they catch Minnie and Diego running towards the ship. And Gut's like, no, they're stealing my ship. It's like, yeah, you have... It's like, oh my god, imagine a big-ass crew where you have a retarded elephant, a retarded fish, 5 YouTube predators, and then Big Bang Theory crew. And of course, why did they have to stuff in that gag with Sid letting go of the vines to eat a goddamn lotus berry and get paralyzed? Which, even if he had still been holding on to the vines when he ate the berry, I'm pretty sure the ship would just be dragging him along. But then they realized, we gotta catch the ship before it hits open water. So they start doing that, and of course he's like dragging Sid along the ground. And also, because again, since Davy Jones and his crew can't teleport in this version, they're kind of just running from a distance, and then Manny throws Sid onto the ship, but he falls in the water before they catapult up in the air, and then... Apparently the Kraken was downgraded to freaking swordfish, so then Davy Jones uses those to catch up to Will Turner, who apparently was able to destroy the Dutchman in this version after he got shanghaied on it, so... Anyways, everybody except for Diego, who crashed into a rock when they were on like an ice slide, they managed to get on the ship, and then Diego's trying to run get on the ship before Shira pins him down, and of course, since Diego lacks in combat, he can't just beat, plus he can't just like, I'm not gonna say the stronger word, that's probably gonna get this video demonetized once I get up on 1,000 subscribers. I know, I'm trying to censor what I say in my videos, so that way I don't sound like I have a hypocritical sense of humor. But then, anyway, Diego eventually encourages Shira to come with him, so she does, but then she sees Gut come up the hill and decides, don't worry, Diego, I got your back, and then she causes Davy Jones to slide and just scrape the ship with his claws before he falls on the ground, and then... So then, they perfectly did it. Manny, Sid, and Diego have a ship home, and they're gonna get reunited with Peaches and Ellie. But unbeknownst to them, Davy Jones got a new ship that he hires his new crew on. And it's like, after he told them to get their sorry carcasses on board. Yes, Gut literally says that word for word. So then he's upset. He decides he's gonna kill Shira, which Shira realizes that Diego is right in this moment. And then Gut vows to destroy Manny and everything he loves, due to Manny supposedly doing the same to him. And then we cut to Scrat, who, apparently Scrat was also on Isla Cruces, and he tries to, like, fly with the planes, like, that the Hyraxes use, and he crashes in the wall a few times before he gets eaten by a shark. But then we cut back to Crash and Eddie, who are at the continent. Crash and Eddie are trying to do some funny stuff, but they climb up 2 trees and wait for the wall to knock them over before they go flying. They land next to Lewis, and then he's like talking, why are you just trying to be silly even though we're about to die? And then Crash and Eddie tell them that they're stupid before Lewis is like, you know what, screw this, I'm gonna go find Peaches. But then we cut to Peaches walking through like a cave with Ethan, Katie, Megan. I know it's the one mammoth was named Katie, one was named Megan, and I don't know what the other male one's name was, but then they're kind of just BSing to the cave, and they're asking her if she's actually friends with Lewis. And it's like, no, me and Lewis aren't actually friends. And somehow Lewis heard them. It's like, not friends. Damn his Vulcan hearing. You know what? Big Bang Theory reference, because we already have a Big Bang Theory cast member in this movie. Fuck it, why not? And of course, Lewis just runs off, and then when the wall actually covers up the entrance to the cave, and then they realize they have to get out of there, but then once they actually manage to leave the cave, Peaches realizes, okay, these guys are just being insanely stupid and don't even care about the ongoing disaster, which, yeah, that is literally what the Wikipedia of this movie says, because they're just being extremely cocky. And then Ethan's like, well, it's kind of bad enough that your family's already half possum, and Peaches is like, no, there is nothing bad about my family. If you cunts are just gonna get your entire species extinct if you keep up these cocky attitudes. And then they shoehorn in a completely stupid joke where, like, some dude says burn, and it's like, we're the same species. Like, what? Double burn. It's like, you're all mammoths, you know that, right? And then also, when we cut back to Minnie, Sid, and Diego on the stolen ship, they got from Davy Jones, and then Sid realizes he's starting to become unparalyzed, and he's speaking. Which, yes, by the way, when Sid got paralyzed, he even lost the ability to speak, and that's why he couldn't even say that he let go of the vines. And then they're about to push him overboard, but then Minnie realizes there's something up with Diego. It's like, did we really get a Romeo and Juliet plotline in the story? And then, of course, Diego's like, no, I am not in love with Shira. But of course, Manny and Sid are just kind of like laughing at Diego. It's like, aha, yes, you are in love with Shira. Until Diego's like, you know what, would you guys just shut the fuck up already? And then there's like a scene where they're going to like a siren cave, which, yeah, they're sirens. Diego sees Shira, but then Sid also catches on the sirens, and then, okay, I'll try to see if I can find a screenshot of Sid's siren and then, like, compare it to that other female sloth from the first film, so that way you can determine, yeah, this is literally the same character. Or, well, obviously it's just a siren, so it's not the same, but same character model, if you know what I mean. And then Granny gets a siren of some, like, muscular dude, and then Minnie's like, are you guys paying attention, before he sees Peaches and Ellie as sirens, and he starts steering over to them until Ellie tells Minnie that he's always right. And Minnie's like, what the fuck? Ellie would never say that. And then that's when he realizes that they're fakes. He's like, no, they're not. They may look real, but they're not. They're going to destroy the ship. And then, like, we even see Minnie try to sing, like, a piss-poor version of the Candyman song before he steers the ship away. And also, Sid was about to kiss the one siren, but then he ends up falling and kissing Diego. It's like, are we going to imply that Sid and Diego are gay? And then they even realize, and then Sid tries to say that cruises are romantic, and he tries telling the sirens to call him, and then the sirens are like, no. But then the sirens end up turning their attention over to Scrat after they see him on, like, an ice ball. It's like, what? We're not even going to explain how Scrat managed to escape from getting eaten by a shark? Before we decide to throw in Scrat-Tay from the last film, and then it's like, hey, remember how Scrat went through a toxic relationship in the last movie? But then they decide, no, we're not doing that again, before the sirens get Scrat's attention by turning into an acorn, which he actually runs over to, and before the sirens can actually eat Scrat, he ends up killing the siren, trying to plant it in the ground because he thinks it's an actual acorn. But then the other sirens show up to avenge their friend, and then they turn themselves into acorn and start beating the shit out of Scrat, which this scene is actually kind of funny. Another joke in this film that I actually laughed at. So then we cut to the following morning where Granny's throwing food in the water for Precious, and it's like, Minnie tells her, we gotta keep an eye out for home. Just stop wasting all our food. And then, anyway, they're sailing, they almost crash into a wall, and then, by the way, the food is getting sucked away, but then Granny pushes the rest of the food in the water, and then once they get past, like, a obstacle, Minnie realizes, oh shit, we're almost home. Now, time to find Peaches and Ellie, and then we're safe. But then we cut back to Peaches and Ellie walking, and then they're kind of talking, and it's like, did you say something that you can't take back? It's about Lewis, then there's plenty of other guys out there, and then Peaches realizes that Ethan was the wrong guy, but then unfortunately they stop right as they get to the land bridge, and then Ellie and Peaches walk forward and realize, oh no, the land bridge is gone, we're fucked, we're all about to die. And Peaches is like, but we were supposed to meet Dad here, what's gonna happen? So then we cut back to Minnie, Sid, and Diego, like, looking around, trying, oh no, where are Peaches and Ellie? No, please say they're still alive, please say they're still alive. And then Minnie's, like, completely in denial, because he doesn't want to refuse that his wife and daughter are dead, which, then, when all seems lost, Minnie hears Peaches calling out, and it's like, oh yay, Peaches is right there, and of course, Peaches is happy that her father is still alive, and, right as they're about to get reunited. Unfortunately, the reunion is cut short because somehow Davy Jones managed to get back to the continent before them, and he has Ellie tied up too, and they're about to tie up Peaches as well. It's like, what? How did you know that Ellie was Manny's wife when you just met her 5 minutes ago? Yeah, this movie's a mess. So then Manny decides to turn himself in and get Peaches, and then they literally, and he's like, now let my wife and daughter go. And then, sorry, but then anyways, Gut's like, no, you destroyed everything that I had, so I'm going to return the favor. And then Lewis tries to, like, fend in, everyone realizes, wait, no, Lewis is getting himself killed, so then he offers Raj to give Gupta his weapon, which, anyways, it kind of goes nowhere until, like, Lewis throws the knife in the air, which they just reuse the same model as Buck's knife from the last film, so Lewis is going under the ground, and he set up an ice block into Gut's foot, which causes him to let go of Peaches, and a huge battle breaks out. But then Sid and Granny are chased by Gupta and Flynn, or I don't know, EDP, whatever was it before. Precious actually shows up and then takes Sid and Granny with them before dunking in the water, and then the fight's just going on before. Anyways, like, Shira's trying to free Ellie, but then unfortunately Squint shows up. But luckily Ellie stomps on Squint, he's like completely flat. But then Squint came back in the Easter special, and then Precious shows up, and by the way, they're all cornered because Dobson charged at Shira, and then Precious dunks underwater and starts blasting water at all the pirates, shooting them into the water. But then Gut's dodging all of them while everyone else is falling in. And Flynn even gets pushed in the water, but he's not like, whoosh, and he's actually enjoying it as the water's like being pressed up against him before he falls in the water. And then Manny realizes, ah, shit, I gotta get Ellie, which Peach is about to do before Gut cuts the last rope, and Manny's like, I'll get your saying that he was gonna get Ellie before Peaches swings over, and he actually manages to hit Gut right in the nick of time, and then she unties her mother, but then Manny knocks over a mask, walks over, he's like, go, I'm right behind you. But then Davy Jones recovers stupid fast, and then, like, the wall starts falling into the water, sends part of the Sweet Revenge ship up, which is what Gut called it, before we see Davy Jones and Will Turner actually fighting each other, and it's like Will Turner doesn't even get mortally wounded during the Maelstrom fight in this version. Instead, they're just kind of fighting, and then Will Turner grabs, like, a stick and just knocks Davy Jones away before he's snatched up by Precious and realizes, oh, so you must be Precious. And also, instead of Davy Jones getting his heart stabbed, he's eaten alive by some sirens, too. So, yeah. And then, basically, Manny officially reconciles with Peaches and Ellie, and Ellie's like, told you your father wouldn't give up on us. Never would. And then Sid and Granny come in, and then Sid is told by Manny that he's not such a screw-up, and then Diego says the same to Granny, and then he invites Shira into their crew, and then they realize, but that's when her realizes that their home is gone, and where to go now, and then Precious takes them to, like, a ice island. I mean, like an island that the Hyraxes apparently own, and then the Hyraxes didn't come back in the 5th film, which is weird, but then as they're getting close to the island, Manny confronts Peaches and Lewis. He's like, when you get off this ship, I expect you to have fun, and Peaches is like, what? You're actually letting me have fun? It's like, and he's like, yeah, Wiener's a brave kid. Just go off and explore the island, but be back before sunset. And then Beach is like, can we do an hour after sunset? Yeah, not a minute later. Deal. Love you, Dad. It's like, no, honestly, that's a nice, heartwarming moment. Manny realizes that his daughter's all grown up and that she can now be free. But the fifth film, they just had to fuck this moment, and then they even invite the other mams to come join them, which none of them came back in the fifth film, so why aren't they there? But then, anyways, Sid gives Granny some new teeth that before we cut back to the final scene in the film where Scrat finally finds Scratlantis and he like paddles towards it. Also, he puts his map in like the back corner of the ice block, but then he actually knocks in the water before he paddles up to Scratlantis. And then we see Aristic, or like the leader of Scratlantis, which is the only time a saber-tooth squirrel actually had dialogue in the whole franchise. He's like, welcome, brother, you made it to Scratlantis. But then Scrat's looking around before he goes nuts and starts stealing all the acorns, which are just reskinned versions of him and Scratay. And then he's about to pull a plug, and then Aristic tells him, no, if you pull that, it'd be more than a rodent. But of course, Scrat pulls it anyway, and it completely just destroys Scratlantis, and he killed literally everybody in there before he ends up in Death Valley, and like the land cracks. And then they have to shoehorn in some random scene where like a hawk is flying, and he just gets burned and dies. And then, just like this movie, the last film, it ends with Scrat screaming into the camera. Yes! That's how this snoozefest is. Like, we had to shoehorn in some Pirates of the Caribbean, some Ice Age, some 2012, and some Finding Nemo. But, yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought of this film. Did you think it was good, or do you really think this is where the franchise started going downhill? Yeah, that's basically it for this video. I'll probably review Collision Course at some point if I can get the Bad Movie Rewrite series back, or maybe just not air the episodes in constituent order. So yeah, that's basically it for the Ice Age films for now. And yeah, please like, comment, share, sub, and peace.